and welcome to Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast with your hosts, Buddy Sotelo Esquire, Dr. Mike Leno, and Evan Ginsberg. So, a lot of things to talk about, but the one that's on everybody's hearts and everybody's minds right now, the passing of one of the truly great, unrecognized legends of professional wrestling.
Well, I wouldn't say that. But AEW took a little bit too long last night on Collision. I sent them a bunch of photos as I did WWE. But I knew, and I bugged you guys, let's do a Dory Funk Jr. tribute, because not so unrecognized, but all of the boys, I'll read some quotes. I mean, everybody from Jim Ross to Triple H, everyone had lots to say about Dory. And I brought him, I couldn't remember if it was 2 or 3 times to Legends with Evan a good 20 years ago, and then once with Terry Funk, Dory and Terry together. But rather than me go, I had first met him in 1969 when Dory Sr. and Terry came into Los Angeles. So I'll just do one story at a time, but I'll pitch to you and Evan. But he won the world title in '69, and the long-standing Los Angeles office, originally it was Jules Strongbow, and then Jules Strongbow sort of lost a battle with Cal Eaton and joined up as his booker, in a battle of guys with money to run Southern California. And so we had the long-standing, the WWA office of Jules Strongbow turned into the Cal Eaton NWA office at Mike LaBelle. So we're fast forwarding to 1969. Dory had just beaten Gene Kiniski, I believe it was Florida, for the NWA World title. And people talk about, on Busted Open, they're talking about, oh yeah, when I think of Dory Funk Jr., I think of the 10 pounds of gold. No, Dory Funk Jr., if you look at this photo, that's the Lou Thez belt that each champion that Thez would have a hand in picking and deciding with Sam Munchnick, particularly at the annual Las Vegas NWA promoters meetings. They would, pick, and promoters would lobby, like, for example, Paul Bosch lobbied for Red Bastien and Jose Lothario and Pepper Gomez to get it. And if you were to get it, you would put up a $25,000 bond, as protection. But Lou Thez had a big hand because he wanted guys who could defend themselves. He helped pick Cowboy Dick Hutton as a champion, and Gene Kiniski, who was the one who dropped the title. And Gene Kiniski had a good travel schedule. But so I'm getting into, so Dory wins the title from Kiniski. Kiniski was one of those, he really kind of started the pace of doing an almost every night defense around the world. But nobody did the schedule that Dory Funk Jr. did for the near 4 years until he dropped it to Harley Race. Some controversial stuff with Dory Funk Sr. there. Dory Funk Sr., I should tell people, legendary wrestler, ran his the West Texas States territory out of Amarillo, which went into like parts of Colorado, New Mexico. So it wasn't limited to Texas, which was such a big state. They had like 4 active territories. The Joe Blanchard's, Fritz in Dallas that he took over. Obviously Houston with legendary, greatest, probably nicest, most ethical promoter ever in Paul Bosch, and the Funk family in Amarillo. So anyway, we're going to fast forward. And so Dory Funk Sr. was a philanthropist. He was always giving, like Eddie Graham, big-time money to the local boys club, boys and girls clubs, etc., within the city. Did lots of charity work. Was known as a great payday guy, fantastic territory. So we fast forward to 1969. Dory has just won the NWA championship, and our Los Angeles longstanding NWA member promotion, or at least when they rejoined the NWA, dropping their WWA champ Bobo Brazil's claim to Kiniski in 1967. So we're in 69, and Vern Gagne paired with the guy who owned not just the LA Lakers basketball team, not just the LA Kings hockey team, but the actual top music and sports venue at the time in 1969 in Southern California, in the Fabulous Forum in Inglewood, which is, out there in a sort of a dangerous part of LA. Vern Gagne pairs up with his friend Jack Kent Cooke, big money guy, and they want to take on, this is an early territory war that was a prelude to Dick the Bruiser versus the Sheik in Detroit a few years later. The Vachons Grand Prix versus the Rougeos International, La Lutte in Montreal, and then Annie Gunkel taking on the NWA for 2 years and nearly beating them for 2 years in attendance in Atlanta, Georgia. So this brief territory war, it only lasted like 3 shows. Sam Munchnick came to the first show for the NWA LaBelle office. My office I work for is one of the ringside photographers and backstage photographers. Munchnick is sitting front row. He never had done that before for anybody's territory. And he sent in talent from all these other NWA territories to really beef up and sort of squash, oddly, his longtime friend Vern Gagne's attempt to take over LA with Jack Kent Cooke. So stacked cards between the two of them, but Dory Jr., Dory Funk Sr., and Terry came in for 2 TVs prior to Funk defending on that first show that opposed or took on Gagne's, which was against the heel Fred Blassie. Blassie wouldn't turn to our top babyface until the following year, 1970. So Dory Funk Jr. on the first one defends on a totally stacked card against Fred Blassie, keeps his NWA title. But the TVs they did when the Funks, Dory Senior, Junior, and Terry came down the ring for our Olympic Auditorium Wednesday TV, which was then on Channel 5 still, KTLA, now a CW affiliate. The place went ballistic. The fans had never even seen these guys before, but they'd read about them in all the newsstand Mark magazines. They went crazy for them. So, like on that card, Dory and Terry had a tag match. Pedro Morales faced the Sheik. Neil Moskers beat Bull Ramos in a hair versus mass match. Like the opener was Ray Stevens, Pat Patterson sent down from San Francisco against Don Leo Jonathan and King Curtis Iakea, who promoter Ed Francis sent from Honolulu. It was just loaded card after card. The next one, I believe, was Funk against the Sheik, NWA title offense, and the third and last knockout punch from the LaBelle NWA office was Moskers against challenging Dory Funk for the NWA World title. Gagne's first show was no slouch. It had Vern defending his AWA title at the Forum the night after the Friday night LA show. So Gagne would run Saturdays. He defended against the heel Dick the Bruiser. Luthez defeated Larry the Axe Hennig. The Vachons, I believe, took on and beat the Blackjacks. Stacked card for Vern, plus he had a women's match. Moolah was on all 3 shows at the Olympic Auditorium. And the Olympic Auditorium, and I'm going to pitch to Evan for his Dory Funk Jr. memories as we pay tribute. They called it Save Our Sports. They were advertising, and they would send out to people who would buy ringside seats, which I have all of these sort of mailings. Save Our Sports. Come and support us. All those NWA at the Olympic Auditorium, LaBelle, Mike LaBelle, Gene LaBelle, Eileen Eaton, wrestling shows completely sold out, and they way outdrew and squashed Vern's attempt. But it was an interesting period because, again, we would have those 3 other territory wars, which were far longer and more aggressive. But the Funks saved, quote unquote, saved our sports, meaning saved wrestling. I don't know why you'd want to save Mike LaBelle, who sometimes would stiff these guys on what he owed them in paydays. But anyway, let me pitch to Evan and Russ on any thoughts. I mean, we haven't even gotten into it. I'm wearing a shirt I got when I was over in Japan when Dory and Terry were over there that I bought at Mitsukoshi to wear to the matches. But they were gods of Japan, and I'll get into that in a bit. But Evan, some Dory Funk Jr. thoughts.
I saw Dory live many times in the 80s. He came into WWF with his brother. Unfortunately, they renamed him Horse Funk. They headlined
after Bonanza, after the big heavy character Bonanza.
You know, because Jack Funk, which was even worse.
Yeah, and their other brother Flash Funk. No, I'm joking, but
not really though.
So they had a main event at the Nassau Coliseum, JYD against Horse Funk. The Funks wrestled a couple of main events against Hogan and various partners like JYD. JYD had the big feud with Terry. Terry eventually headed for the hills. He had enough. Um, so
He didn't show up for a show. He just said, "I'm done with this," and didn't even show up at the house show. His book done.
yeah, there was some crazy story. He told Vince his horse was sick or something, and he's going back to the ranch or some crazy story. I don't know all the details, but anyway, by the '80s, Dory's star had waned a bit. I saw him in Florida on vacation. I saw him in ECW with Terry. They had a crazy barbed wire match with Public Enemy.
Wow.
People tend to forget that Dory occasionally came into ECW, not nearly as much as Terry, who was a mainstay. I tell people all the time. I end up saying the same exact thing. I'll say that match was good, or that match was very good, or that match was excellent, but it wasn't Ric Flair, Ricky Steamboat, Dory Funk, Jack Briscoe. So in my head, as an old school fan, the epitome, the heights of wrestling as art is Dory Funk and Jack Briscoe wrestling for an hour or close to an hour. And my big question remains, would today's younger fans, weaned on high spots and short matches and fast paced, and would they even grasp, would they understand a Dory Funk Jack Briscoe masterpiece, 1 hour Broadway, or would they be twiddling their thumbs? It's almost like a lost art. You just don't see very many 1 hour Broadways anymore, and if you do, they're still loaded with all kinds of high spots. And Will Ospreay and MJF and Swerve and guys like that have done hour matches, but it's a very different feel than Dory Funk and Jack Briscoe. So, for example, they'd be working on a body part, and today's fans might go, "Oh, that's a rest hold." But back in the day, they were telling a story. Kowalski worked body parts. This was Johnny Valentine, of course. This was standard back then, and I don't know if today's fans would understand it or appreciate it. But I felt sad when I heard he passed, because as somebody who started watching wrestling in '72 and attending in '74, he was a god in wrestling. A god, I saw online this past week many younger fans going, "Who is Dory Funk?" They had no idea.
That's what I'm saying about he's an unrecognized legend.
Well, for today's fans, but Evan's right. He was a god, not just in the U.S., but Japan. We'll get into that. But
St. Louis, Florida, all the
L.A., San
territories.
Francisco. Starting in 1976, Dory came to and that's the only time of year he would come. He would come to San Francisco for Roy Shire's annual 18-man battle royal every January from 1976 until Roy closed up shop January '82.
Now, Mike, that's the one time this year you're allowed to mention the Roy Shire battle royal. You've now hit your limit.
Those battle royals were incredible. The talent pool, that was the first time, and they locked up. Harley Race was in that '76 one.
I know, but you only
I got to watch them lock up
and
do a shitload of stuff. And I look at what some of the magazine articles I wrote in the '70s and '80s, and I would use terms like magnificent, flawless. That's, what Evan is asking, I think because people believed, the fans, the marks, they believed in many, many places, most everywhere. The majority of the fans in attendance believed, and that's lacking now. People know it's a work, but they appreciate the artistry, the picture the guys are painting, the storytelling, selling.
Let me say a few things about Dory, and that is Dory and Terry. Well, first of all, I didn't get to see a lot of Dory as a singles wrestler, because you're talking, I was like 9, when he was in his prime, I was like 8 or 9 years old. So it wasn't, I saw him more in the '80s when he was Hoss Funk. I knew about him in World Class. I'd seen him in Mid-South Wrestling, and I saw a match with him and his brother, Terry, against Kamala and Abdullah the Butcher. And that was crazy. That was a crazy, crazy, wild, out of control match that really, like, I was always thinking that Terry Funk and Dory Funk were more scientific guys, and I didn't realize they could go absolutely hardcore, down to the hitting. Abdullah had this fork in his boot, and Dory took it out of the boot and started whapping Abdullah with it, and then Kamala was like just took Terry Funk outside the ring. It was just total mayhem, and I think that's what's really intriguing to me about a career of Dory Funk is that and same with Terry, is that they made that transition, same with like Ric Flair, from being part of the old school headlock, work a headlock, punch the guy a bunch of times, don't do any real kind of moves, but you're really just doing, not big finishing moves, but you're doing lots of small moves to build up to it. I mean, Dory Funk was a master of the spinning toe hold. When are we going to see a spinning toe hold win a match in today's society? It's just not.
Well, Flair's figure four is just a transition. Most of the finishers, like Harley Race's suplex, you'd hold the guy up for a couple of minutes.
The hangman, yeah.
It's not a finisher for anyone, which is criminal. But what you brought up was that Dory was a scientific wrestler, but he mastered all the styles, became one of the greatest trainers.
Terry made that transition, and they could get down and dirty with the most physical.
Well, Terry always was. They were those three, Dory Funk Senior, Junior, and Terry, all had unique personalities. Terry was always the wild guy, even in his rookie year, and Senior and Junior helped train Terry. Dory was the collegiate professor, the amateur great, doing scientific wrestling. He had matches with like Billy Robinson. People are talking about, even in the 70s, not just the 60s. And Lou Thez and Nick Bockwinkel's dad, Warren Bockwinkel, who was living in San Francisco at the time, but Thez and Warren Bockwinkel helped Dory Funk Sr. train Junior, to where in 1963, Thez, gave him the gift of an hour Broadway with Dory Jr. Dory went into the AWA briefly in the 60s, around 64-ish. I think it might have just been a TV taping or something like that, worked for Verne, who only wanted amateur greats. But he, particularly in All Japan, Giant Baba's All Japan Carnivals, that was an annual tour, one of the biggest. And the Funk Brothers they had matches. That's why I was thinking the bout you saw, Russ, might have been in Japan, not Mid-South, but maybe you did see it in Mid-South, because they had the wars with Abdullah the Butcher and the Sheik, which they would recreate for promoter the Sheik in Detroit in like 77, 78. We're going to go through Dory Jr.'s history in Detroit very briefly. That Sheik's ring announcer sent me, Terry Sullivan. I asked him for Dory Jr. history in Detroit, and there was way more of it than I thought. But Dory Funk also bled buckets. If you watch, I recommend everybody, it's free to go to YouTube and see the movie, the Sheik documentary from about 75 through 77 when they filmed it. I like to hurt people because both Dory and Terry wrestle the Sheik in it. Terry's arm, his whole forearm is gigged by the Sheik's pencil and Abby's fork. But in the Champion Carnival, back to All Japan, that famous tournament people talk about, Dory and Terry wrestle Harley Race, then NWA champion, Nick Bockwinkel, then AWA champion, in tag matches for this tournament. They wrestle then, like the next night, Sheik and Abby, all four bleeding, other great insane teams. So the proof of that is exactly what you're saying, is Dory and Terry, but really Dory could adapt and do any style. I mean, Dory Funk Jr. would never think the guy's face would be the Gordon Soley Crimson Mask, and it was. I mean, Evan and Russ, I want to ask, have you guys watched Dory and Terry in Japan against Sheik and Abby? I'm sure you guys have.
That's wild, yeah.
Yeah,
for that
I
time.
thought
It
it was
was
a Mid-South
insane.
match that I saw. I
So,
thought it was Mid-South.
I mean,
But maybe it
Dory
could have been
had,
one that they showed on Mid-South TV that was from
yeah, I
Japan.
think it was
Sometimes
a
did that.
tape. But Dory did defend the title that was then still called Mid Southern. Before Bill Watts took over as promoter, it was Leroy McGurk, Mike McGurk, the first female ring announcer in WWF, her dad. And he came in and defended the NWA title and had some of his greatest long Broadways with Bill Watts. And that was my point. You know, Ric Flair has put out there, Jack Briscoe before he passed, Kaniski, they all said, even Lou, Dory Funk Jr.'s almost near nightly defense of the NWA title all over the world. Way more trips to Japan than Briscoe, Harley, and Thez, I would say combined, and other places too. You know, only really on par with Ric Flair. Dory Funk Sr. had an insane NWA schedule, and even Terry, you know, Terry begged off and asked because he wanted to make things better with his wife Marty, longtime wife Marty, since they were like kids. When he was champion, he asked Sam Muchnick, as did Jack Briscoe, to take the strap off him. It was straining the marriage. But Dory, it did too, because Marty Funk, who Dory married in '89, was Dory's second wife after the first one. He had some of those kids with, the blonde gal, I'm forgetting her name because I was at their house. But how about some other, so, you know, Dory and ECW, I mean, because ECW had other shows besides its Philly at ECW Arena with Dory and Terry on them, like in Florida, and I think they might have been in Chicago. Dory was on one of those shows. You know, it's just, when you look at his workload and setting, sort of a thing that Harley Race and Ric Flair would try to duplicate, go in, make the local talent, whether he's wrestling Lonnie Main or Tough Tony Bourne in Portland, or God, the match that he had in 1970 was magnificent with the High Chief Peter Maivia at the LA Olympic Auditorium. Just, you know, I was saying that was an NWA title defense in 1970. That was his last NWA title defense. In 1972, he and Terry, Giant Baba with Ricky Dozan's promotion that Baba and Inoki still work for, because it was, you know, this was like April of 1972. In December 1972, both All and New Japan would be created by Baba and Inoki respectively. But Inoki's number two, when he created New Japan, he and Giant Baba, that being Seiji Sakaguchi, was Inoki's number two. He and Baba defeated the Funks. They claimed that the Funks held the international tag straps. Well, I think that was fictitious. They just created those. They later soon became the All Japan Pro Wrestling Tag, you know, world titles. But that topped a completely stacked Los Angeles Olympic Auditorium card that was sold out weeks in advance. It had like John Tolis reffing, the Sheik, Superstar Billy Graham's debut against Chris Tolis, Killer Kowalski defeating Rocky Soulman Johnson, Black Gordman losing to Great Goliath in the Who's the Boss, so the former tag partners battle in a cage, and that turned Black Gordman back heel. Like the opening match, Don Carson against Emil Mascaris, Freddie Blassie's old tag partner, Don Carson. It was just stacked stuff, and they were the main event of that. And well, let me throw back to Evan, because we'll start talking about more about Dory's history in Japan. And as a trainer, he trained so many people, you know, almost on par. Not quite as many training or finessing as Stu Hart, but Ev, some more thoughts on Dory.
My thought is that WWE, with 3 hours of programming, should take 5 or so minutes. And when somebody of this stature, who did so much and trained guys that worked in WWE over the years, you know, why not really devote a segment to his career highlights rather than just a brief mention or the 30-second photo or whatnot, like they did disgracefully with Ivan Koloff for a couple of seconds. You know, really, you know, we're talking about the guy for a good part of an hour show. It's like, you know, they don't really honor their history, and there's
I agree. I think that's a big problem. I think it is. It's almost as they're embarrassed by it. It's not even that they don't want to honor their history. It's that it's this kind of dual thing that, like, one, we don't have as much control over it as we want to, so we don't want to talk about that. And two, why should we talk about the past when we can tell you about how great the Bellas are and we're bringing them back? You know, everyone get excited about the Bellas, all right? You know,
well, they didn't air. They
them.
should have aired something. Their NXT announcer Vic Joseph, who's amazing. That's one positive of Channel 156. You know, the former Pro Wrestling Nation 24/7 AK Busted Open Daily Show, but they have live commentary of all their pay-per-views that Vic Joseph does. So Vic Joseph did a Dory Funk Jr. tribute video that's a little more than a minute, but that was great. And he saluted, so I'm just doing off the top of my head. These are some WWF huge Hall of Fame names that Dory Funk Jr. exclusively trained. He trained Mickie James, Nick Aldis's wife, who's been a world champion in WWF, TNA, etc. Test, Edge and Christian, the Hardys, Mark Henry, Kurt Angle, to name just a few. And he had a hand in finessing Nick Aldis, again, Mickie James' husband, at the last Cauliflower Alley I went to in 2019. Nick Aldis lobbied. He politicked to be the one to give Dory Jr. his second CAC award on stage. And I've talked about this on other people's shows this week since Dory died. Luthez instilled, not just when he helped train Dory Jr., but when Dory got the strap put on him and then was working and learning from Lou, even in 1969, to always wear a suit whenever you go out in public, because that's what I did. It made the title credible. You get in people's minds, even though you're a performer, but that you're an athlete. And Dory passed that on to Nick Aldis and others, who held, we'll call it the Billy Corgan NWA title. And Nick Aldis did an incredible job with that, and he wore a suit out in public and did all the things that Dory taught him, that Luthez had taught Dory Jr., and Dory Jr. taught others to wear a suit in public, to wear, even Mark Henry, when he had the ECW or some of the other titles, would wear suits in public, and Kurt Angle did, of course, and so I think that's kind of a neat legacy. But so the Vic Joseph in the package, the video package, that I think you have to go to WWE.com, et cetera, to see, sadly. I don't know why AEW on Wednesday night didn't do anything. They didn't do anything until Collision last night, but they had Tony Schiavone talk at length, and that was nice, but it was a little too late, and they could have done a video package there. So I'm calling on WWE to take that video package and at least show it. So audiences, fans today, they definitely know who the Hardys are, and they know who Kurt Angle is. But who's the guy that trained them? And so many countless other, male and female. Lita, she really talked at length. So many folks, Jim Ross, almost daily, and he's going in for brain surgery, I believe Tuesday, has been talking as the Class, I called him that, but Jim Ross, greatest world champion ever, toughest. Triple H has been blabbing about him. Here's Jim Ross on Dory Funk Jr. It's pretty brief. As a trainer and performer, Jim, I'm quoting this, on his coaching mind, he and Tom Pritchard did an amazing job of training a lot of young talents that went ahead and made it. He was just a hell of a teacher, hell of a coach, and that's what he had. He had the coach's mentality. As a striker, Jim Ross, and I quote here, Dory's signature skill inside the squared circle, he had tons. He had the best forearm uppercut still in the business today, and that's true. The European uppercut, you associate that almost as much as the spinning toe hold, which is a beautiful finisher, like the Briscoe brothers and Buddy Rogers and others, figure four leg lock. On Dory's legacy,
you don't see it as a finisher. You would never see someone do a spinning toe hold as a finisher.
It is pretty damn spectacular. Triple H said Dory Funk Jr.'s unique style inspired countless performers and cemented him as an absolute pillar of professional wrestling. Ricky Morton really put over Dory Funk Jr. saying the Rock and Roll Express wouldn't have been who they are without Dory Funk Jr. Dory Funk Jr. wasn't just a champion. He was a bridge between generations, between styles, between eras of wrestling that barely resemble each other, including today's high spot era. So many guys. Jerry Briscoe, there was a free wrestling at the Chase St. Louis. Funk Brothers against the Briscoe Brothers. I urge people, go online and look at that. Look at all of the stuff that Dory Jr. did in Japan with Giant Baba. Giant Baba was not the easiest guy to, he was kind of a lumbering wrestler, but Dory Funk Jr. made him look like a superstar. Very briefly, and then I'll throw back to you guys, I'll shut up. The Funks were the first true gaijin, foreign wrestlers in Japan, to get cheered, because it was still the World War II attitude, and we'd done the horrific stuff with the bombs in Hiroshima, etc., and Nagasaki in Japan. And when Luthez and Blassie and Dick Beyer, the Destroyer, and the Duseks and the Sharp Brothers helped Rikidozan get the first men's promotion, All Japan Women already existed as the WWWA. Before the men, Rikidozan created Japan Wrestling Alliance, JWA. But the Funks were the first who were of the people, and they were cheered, beloved. They were like the very first foreign gaijin wrestlers in Japan, non-Japanese, to get cheered. And they also cemented that with bringing in the great Kojika as a rookie and training him and sending him from their Amarillo school with Dory Funk Senior, and also Jumbo Tsuruta, Tommy Jumbo Tsuruta. They trained him fully and sent him back to Giant Baba in Japan, and so many others would come in there from All and New Japan, but primarily All Japan, where the Funks were loyal to Baba. So many guys they trained and sent back there to where they are, I'm sure, Japan's greatest non-Japanese wrestling legends, just totally beloved on that level with the hooker shooter Luthez and Carl Gotch. So it's the Funks, Gotch, and Thez as most beloved, most respected gaijin in Japan. Guys, I'll throw back.
As an old school fan who has met many of my heroes over the years, you become a little jaded, and when you approach somebody for an autograph, it varies your level of excitement and respect. But the first time I met Dory Funk Jr. and asked, can I have your autograph, sir? You realize it's like, this is like the Mount Rushmore of wrestling history. A Thez, a Dory Funk Jr., a Bruno Sammartino, a Buddy Rogers. There's this elite air. There's millions of wrestlers over 100+ years. But when you first meet a Dory Funk Jr., you realize, this guy, this is special. This is a whole different level of greatness. And I'm glad shows like this are acknowledging them if WWE isn't doing as much as they should, which generally they don't. They have important things to do on WWE TV, like Roman Reigns talking about his $250,000 watch for 20 minutes. Why would you talk about one of the greatest champions in history passing?
Well, again, I think it's because they don't see themselves making money off of it. It is a little ironic that WWE will trot out, a guy like The Undertaker, and Brock Lesnar sounds like he's still not done being wrestling. I knew that. I knew that wasn't going to be a retirement match.
Brock Lesnar, they'll go to Saudi Arabia and they'll go, we got a couple of million for you. Come in and do a 5-minute match. He's not going to say no to that. Come on.
No, he's not. And that, they'll come up with some BS excuse to bring him out of retirement. We know that whole retirement thing in wrestling is a scam. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see The Undertaker get back in the ring one more time for some crazy, 10-man tag match or something like that, where the WWE wants to make a serious amount of money. So, it's weird they won't acknowledge the really old retired guys, but the ones that are recently retired, they can't wait to bring back. I mean, look, you're going to have Randy Orton play a major part in whatever next major WWE pay-per-view is now because of the cutoff that he did on Cody Rhodes. You're going to have Cody Rhodes up against Randy Orton. So that's already, part of the senior circuit continuing to work its way through the WWE. So, but the ones that are distant legends, the WWE just throws completely out of the bathwater. I was having a discussion with somebody about Ray Stevens and how WWE hasn't mentioned Ray Stevens in decades. I haven't seen them
they put him in that secondary WWE Hall of Fame, whatever you call it.
Exactly, which is kind of like an old attic.
But he actually wrestled there. Pat Patterson brought him in. Pat Patterson, once he finally got to the Tri-WF for Vince McMahon Sr., he hit it off with Vince Jr., and he was sort of the liaison that brought in San Francisco talent. Fuji had a rift with Vince Sr. Pat Patterson smoothed that over because Fuji was a U.S. champion for Roy Shire in San Francisco. He brought in Morocco, Peter Mavia, several Rocky Johnson. Yeah, and then Ray Stevens was like the last as a bone to throw. Now I have a shot that my trainer, the late Theo Ehret, took of the Funks, Dory Sr., Jr., and Terry at the Olympic Auditorium backstage in 1969, the night they debuted at our TV, our television, our Wednesday night TV, then on Channel 5. That was our Spanish show that we sent to Hispanic cities around the world, major Hispanic populated cities. So Russ, I emailed that. You can put that up on the screen because I own that image, when he passed. I've got pretty much a lot of his photos, as did another photographer, buddy. So if you can throw that up there, you'll see that's just backstage at our downstairs Olympic Auditorium. Dory's world champion. So it says Ehret Funk family, and Theo Ehret is the guy that took the shot. Should get all that credit for a magnificent shot that was in magazines globally, like Gong, etc. For today's younger people, I think you get an appreciation. You want to learn what Thez and Kiniski and any older videos. If you want to see how wrestling has progressed, I would even watch Gorgeous George stuff because that, Buddy Rogers and Ric Flair lifted a bunch of the stuff that he was doing at the forefront, and he was the first guy to have music. To my knowledge, Gorgeous George, and not that long later, Buddy Rogers had the Nature Boy song that Nat King Cole had sang. A lot of folks don't know that.
The ring entrance. That was the thing, as they said.
The whole spectacle he had first the male manager for many years, and then his second wife, Cherie Dupree, who would spray the ring with Chanel No. 5, and they'd spray some of the fans. It was actual expensive Chanel No. 5. And but then you had that influenced the Sheik to bring out the prayer rug and have this insanely elaborate, colorful entrance, and so on and so forth. To like Chris Jericho debuting whatever it was right before the year 2000 with that amazing. Then it was state of the art. Yeah, the Y2J with the fireworks and the break the walls down and the video and the atomic clock going off. That you can trace all that back to Gorgeous George, and so you can with funk through the Strangler Ed Lewis to Thez, who Strangler Ed Lewis trained, and then Thez helping train Dory Jr. And I think you even see some of today's, not all of them, but you see some, whatever the company, be it WWE or AEW, or definitely in Japan, when those world champions from New Japan are out in public doing public events, they're in a suit. They're dressed to the nines, all from Lou Thez, who came up with that. And Flair, not always, but a lot of the time Flair would be dressed to the nines. I'd see him checking into a hotel in the 70s or coming to St. Louis or Florida in a suit. When he's in that hotel lobby, he knew there'd be a ton of fans, or at the airport, fans greeting him, even though he was a heel. Russ, I didn't see. Did you put up that shot of the Funks I emailed you?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
like,
It's a beautiful shot, and Terry, unlike Dory, Terry metamorphosized. Like every year, he would change his look. He'd grow a mustache. He would shave it off. He'd bleach his hair. He'd grow, a beard, or he'd have a goatee. Always different. And I just can't say enough great things about the Funk. Dory Funk Senior. Watch an hour. It was sort of a work. It wasn't quite an hour. It might have been 45 minutes. Texas Death Match against Ciclo Negro from Amarillo, or against Dick Murdoch, or any of the greats that came through, just to see the influence of Dory Funk Sr. on his son. I don't think anybody. I went out there and was trolling around to see if anybody's doing a tribute show. We're the only show, I believe, other than perhaps in Japan, doing full-on Dory Funk Jr. tribute show today, or this week since it occurred. Just man, was Dory was. I was so jazzed to always see him. So I'm going to. You guys talk, because I'm going to bring up. You guys will be blown away with some of the stuff he did and some of the names he faced, like Billy Robinson in Detroit at Cobo Hall.
Why would you do a 1 hour tribute to Dory Funk Jr. when you could overanalyze Chelsea Green's injury, where the interim women's champion will now probably be an interim women's champion. You know, you could cover important things like this instead of honoring one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. I mean, there's 50,000 wrestling podcasts. 49,000 of them are overanalyzing meaningless WWE shows.
Or Danhausen. Yeah, why aren't people? Why would you not want to do Dory Jr. instead of? I'm already kind of bored. I think he's already jumped the shark for me. Danhausen, who I love.
I knew this was going to happen. I knew it was going to happen. I said the WWE is going to WWEize Danhausen and make you sick of him, even as much as you love him. They can't help it. It's what they do. It's their specialty.
Well, he's moving T-shirts, so that's their number one. You know, that's their drive.
And they're hoping that this Halloween.
But his actual segments, they kind of like the same every week. He's working on in his laboratory in the back of whatever venue they're in, which makes no sense.
They're grinding him into the ground.
He electrocuted the Miz, and I forget what that other guy's name is. The guy does. I have some really quick funny story. Dick Steinborn, who was second generation wrestler, his dad was legendary Milos Steinborn. But he was predominantly 60s, 70s wrestler. He helped Eddie Einhorn get the IWA off the ground, competing in 1975 through 78 against Sam Munchnick's NWA and Vince McMahon Sr.'s Tri-WF. But Dick Steinborn was a great rib artist and impersonator, and he would call and screw with Dory Jr., doing, not that there's anything wrong with, but promoter, sort of booker in Indianapolis and then Atlanta and Australia's WCW, which was an incredible promotion from like 69 to 78 in Australia. I mean, with Mark Lewin and Spiros Arian as the lead faces, taking on Abdullah the Butcher, Killer Carl Cox, Killer Kowalski, Ray Stevens, all of these guys, amazing stuff. So Dick Steinborn would call up like at 2 a.m. and wake up Dory Jr., whether he was at home in Amarillo, and this is when he was world champ, or in Japan, and say, Dory, I need you to get right quick here to Atlanta for me. And he would impersonate that Southern gay drawl, the effeminate, anybody that knew Jim Barnett had, who was quite the legend. And he was the one that screwed over Ole Anderson with the Briscoes to kill off the time slot. That's how Vince got that, Black Saturday for about a year, that WTBS time slot. We turn on expecting our beloved Georgia Championship Wrestling, and we're seeing shitty house show squash WWF matches with Freddie Miller up there introducing Vince McMahon Jr. and making people throw up. So Dick, and I asked Funk about these. I asked Dory when I was at his house the first time. This was prior to him marrying Marty, with the first wife, the blonde. whose name is escaping me. I can't remember if it's Julie or Debbie, something like that. And yeah, he said he always fell, because he was so good natured, and Dick Steinborn sounded exactly like Jim Barnett, making demands. He was kind of a powerful promoter in those days. So this is from Sheik's longtime ring announcer. He worked behind the scenes and helped with lots of stuff, like Dave Brzezinski, doing the Sheik's program, and his ringside photographer, and later was a manager before Dave left, managing even the Sheik and other talent. Mike, lots of 1970s appearance from both Funks as a favor to the Sheik, who initially had helped draw a lot of huge houses in Dory Funk Sr.'s Amarillo territory when Dory Funk Sr. was just getting a foothold. So they were always, even when the Sheik in the mid to late 70s was kind of waning because he never would lose cleanly, even when the houses were down, the Funks came out to help. So October 23rd, 1971, Dory came in as a one-shot where he defended the NWA World title against Ernie Ladd for the first time in Detroit on a card loaded with stars from around the country to send a message to Dick the Bruiser, who had gone from Gagne's attempt to take over LA to restarting his WWA promotion based in Indianapolis in opposition to try to take over Sheik's Detroit. So all of these matches were at Cobo Arena, the Sheik's main auditorium. So that was 1971. But February 10th of 73, so these next three matches, Dory defends the NWA World title against Pampero Firpo, a no contest February 24th against the Sheik, and then the rematch where the Sheik won by DQ, but Dory kept the title. 1977, there was a 4-year wane. July 9th, 1977, Terry beats the Sheik by DQ. July 23rd, Sheik beats Terry in a U.S. title defense. September 3rd, 1977, Dory and Terry win by DQ over Sheik and Abdullah the Butcher. And Terry Sullivan, Sheik's ring announcer, writes, "Mike, we got to relive their incredible Japan classics," meaning Dory and Terry against Sheik and Abby. September 17th of 77, Sheik and Abdullah the Butcher beat Dory and Terry in the return grudge match. 1978. I'm winding this up. February 4th, so these are all 78 these are all 1978. February 4th, Dory drew Billy Robinson at Cobo Arena in a match that's supposed to have some footage online. April 16th, Sheik beat Terry Funk for the U.S. title. April 29th, Terry and Mighty Igor beat Sheik and Eric the Red, the late great Eric the Red. June 24th, Terry beat Eric the Red by DQ. I'll just do the Dory ones now. August 19th, Dory drew heel Bulldog Don Kent, while Terry and Andre on the same show beat the Fabulous Kangaroos, Al Costello and Don Kent, who did double duty. October 8th, Dory beat a young Rick Martel at Detroit's Cobo Hall, while on the same show, Terry beat fellow babyface Marky Lewin of famous Mark Lewin, Don Curtis tag team. Okay, let's see. December 11th, Sheik and Dick the Bruiser won by countout over Dory and Terry. Sheik and Dick the Bruiser, when Bruiser had to give up his WWA promotion and join the Sheik there. So very, very cool stuff. A big thanks to Terry Sullivan. Oh, wait, there's a few more results. 1979, Sheik and his son, Captain Ed George. None of the marks knew Captain Ed George, a babyface, was the Sheik's son. Beat Dory and Pancho Villa. Pancho Villa being Alex K.O. Perez, who believed the father of Al Perez, who came later. You'll remember him from the 90s in Dallas.
So Seth Rollins' face and Ed.
Yeah. And October of 1979, Mighty Igor beat Dory on a countout. 1980, this is the last. Sheik and Abby beat Dory and Chief Jay Strongbow on another show. The Funks double DQ with Sheik and Abby, recreating once again their All Japan magic in Detroit. Sheik and Abby beat Dory and Terry in a cage in March. And then 2 weeks later, Japanese spike match, Dory beat Abdullah the Butcher. June of 1980 in a tag tournament, Dory and Flying Fred Curry beat Ray Candy and Rick Bolton. The semi-final was Giant Baba and Jumbo Tsuruta beating, let's see, they beat Dory and Terry. And in Dory Funk Jr.'s last Detroit match, October 5th, 1980, the Sheik beat Dory Funk Jr. in a nail-board, blood-filled match. So thank you, Terry Sullivan, for Dory Funk Jr. history in Detroit, fabulous wrestling city.
But were any of those matches as good as Baron Corbin against Trick Williams at SummerSlam?
All I'm going to say about Trick Williams is listen to Steely Dan. They had a song about Trick Williams' nickname, I think like back in '73, Haitian Divorce, where the heel character in that song is called Trick Willie, which is what Trick Williams calls himself. I'm thoroughly entertained by Trick Williams, but
he should be getting he should have gotten better treatment and not have to job to Corbin. Now I have something that I have an agenda issue for myself here. I, with Wrestling for Charity, just performed for as manager for a couple wrestlers down right in front of Oracle Park in San Francisco at McCovey Cove. And
which is where the San Francisco Giants play, Russ.
Exactly. And so, as a heel manager, I want to share with you all what I just said to all the Giants fans, as my character, Buddy Sotelo, has something to say. So, here we go, guys.
Seen a winner since 2014, and you're about to lose 100 games this season. You guys are a joke. What is not a joke is the biggest dog in professional wrestling right now. The man that is in the ring right now, the High Desert Champion, he is a man that knows greatness. He understands what it takes to rise to the top of Wrestling for Charity. You guys do not understand. You do not care. And you do not know what greatness is all about. You have forgotten what the legends are. You forgot that Wall of Fame that's going up today features nobody not as great as this man in the ring right now. You can forget your Will Clark. You can forget your panda and your silly panda hats. What a joke that was. You guys were a joke of professional baseball. And you're a bigger joke right now with the season you're having right now. Buster Posey is trading this team into the ground. Oh, yeah. Oh, he's mean to Buster Posey. Buster Posey has done nothing to show that he deserves to be president of baseball operations. I could run that team. Buddy Sotelo could run this team better than Buster Posey. Okay? I would not lose 100 games as the president of baseball operations. I would have brought Ohtani here, okay? I would have brought Aaron Judge here. I would have brought Giancarlo Stanton here. You guys did nothing in free agency. You guys did nothing this season. You guys are a joke, and instead, you should sit here and watch.
That's like a
that is the biggest dog. He is the biggest dog. He is
what
the
a beautiful
greatest dog.
setting, and Russ is doing a great
and you
job.
will cheer him. You will give him the respect that he deserves. Even if you are not one of his fans, you will show him the respect he deserves.
Russ, who's the female ring announcer? That's not our
that's
APW.
Naomi Garcia, and it's funny that you mentioned that. I want to have her on as a guest on the show coming up. So you'll get a chance to talk to her.
Who is she? Who is she?
She's Wrestling for Charities, but she also does announcing for East Bay Pro and for Oasis Pro Wrestling. So she's kind of a local.
Get her on. I mean, I was thinking, is that Betty Beefcake? I looked first. I go, is that Betty Beefcake?
No. Betty's been a long time retired, but Naomi we will have on the show.
And Russ, you better wear that jacket. I want you to hold that ring jacket up. Maybe next week show us that Buddy Sotelo ring jacket you wore there.
Oh yeah, no, it's I used to wear the full on suit, but one, it got so uncomfortable during the summer heat, and two, I lost a match where I was supposed to retire, so I retired the suit, but I went to the kind of
so you welched out on the steps. Russ welched out on the steps of the match and retired only the suit, not himself.
Yes, exactly. And then I went with the Bobby Heenan sweat sweats outfit with the embroidery on it and all that stuff. But anyway, it's great to get back to the ring. It was great to, for Wrestling for Charity to do something like that. This was a Giant sponsored event, even though I was bashing them. You have to do something as a heel, right? And don't want to make fun of the fans. But
we know you love the Giants, as I still love the Giants. So.
Oh yeah, and saw the Russo interview. But hey, Buddy Sotelo is technically from New York, so I could, throw that around and the Yankees.
Not the East Bay. Let's wrap up our tribute. You guys, final thoughts on the legend. I believe we're the only radio show podcast doing a full-on Dory Funk Jr. very deserved tribute. And one of my all-time favorites, and a brilliant wrestler. Always excited, even if he was in there with a JYD, to see what magic Dory Funk Jr. could create.
I would say, I mean, I could be wrong, but I would say the Funk Brothers were the greatest brother tag team in history. I mean, you got the Briscoes, you have the Tolless brothers, you have the Dusicks, et cetera, so on. But
you have the Steiners. You have the
Steiners, but you don't have two all-time classic NWA champions as tag team brothers. And Mike, you know your history. Was there a bigger, better brother tag team than the Funk?
No, I mean, people are making cases. I would say modern day, post that era, the Hardys, because collectively and individually they've held, world titles and stuff like that. But those aren't the NWA world titles. Dory and Terry also held the America's Tag Team title, the big one on the West Coast out of our territory. They held all of the titles in their Amarillo territory, pretty much everything in Florida, including Dory's first foray as a heel, he helped turn David Von Erich heel in Florida for Eddie Graham. So I agree with Evan. Evan. There is no one that can touch the Funk Brothers, because these were touring world champions. They weren't company champions, so I'm not knocking the Hardys. They are today's, they're a little bit ahead of the Road Warriors, but that's the more modern era. But
Road
overall,
weren't actual brothers. I'm saying as far as actual
brothers, right.
brothers. I mean, the Valiant brothers were brothers from different mothers.
I would have the Funk Brothers and then the Briscoes right underneath, because few people remember, besides Jack Briscoe, NWA World Heavyweight Champion. Jerry Briscoe, for a couple of years, was the NWA World Junior Heavyweight Champion. So,
but that's not the same prestige as
no. That's why the Briscoes are a tad
yeah.
below the Funks. Yeah. But the Funks, for me, greatest brother duo ever. No touching them.
I would say so. I can't think of anybody else that would be bigger.
The Steiners, did manage.
But they weren't world champions.
Not individually, but they did hold titles in the WCW.
Well, Scott was, but that's it's a company champion. That's WCW champion. That's I'm not going to. I'm going to say NWA, WCW. Anything past Flair and Dusty is fairly meaningless. I mean, you're not going to really talk about. I don't know. Guys like a Barry Windham, they don't get the credit they deserve because he was an excellent champion. But Funk's greatest brother tag team ahead of the Briscoes, and that's really saying something. And I would rather watch anything that Dory Funk Jr. or Terry or Jack or Jerry did than, okay, you can watch the 2 nights of SummerSlam or Dory Funk Jr. match. I'm watching Dory Funk Jr.
Well, I will admit, I don't have enough knowledge of his singles years where he fought by himself. I mean, I only really remember him as, part of a tag team with Dory Funk, and I didn't see them at much of their greatness level because that sort of stuff wasn't on TV around here at that, when they were young.
But it is because Roy Shire, the last 3 shows he did, he had to bring in Eddie Graham talent. The first one was the Funk Brothers, and that was the opener against Mike Graham and Barry Windham in an outstanding, for me,
but they weren't on TV around here locally. So, I mean, I didn't get to. So maybe if I get a chance to reacquaint myself, I'll maybe, watch some old school Dory Funk Jr. matches on YouTube and get, you know, more up to speed on some of his better solo stuff, because I don't have enough of that, you know, that I've watched myself to know all the greatness that he was as this individual.
Watch him. That was on a Slamboree. Dory Funk Jr. against Nick Bockwinkel, classic match. Watch Dory against Antonio Inoki, 1970, before all in New Japan were created, and then anything Dory against Harley Race or Jack Briscoe, or even Giant Baba or Jumbo Tsuruta. Dory against his trainee Jumbo Tsuruta, or Fritz von Erich. I mean, Dory carried him to an amazing match, and Fritz was no slouch. He's a huge guy, a powerhouse guy, but Dory made him wrestle Dory's style, or, you know, sort of by booking, but whatever. It was a masterpiece too, and I wouldn't normally say that about a Fritz von Erich match.
All right, well, guys, we're at the end of the hour. Evan, you want to plug some stuff?
Sure. I have a new show, the Evan Ginsberg Show, on Blair Cody's Wrestling with the 80s YouTube channel, and in our first episode we do a tribute to Lou Albano and the Valiants, and much more, and Blair put a lot of time and work into this, and feels like a show. I mean, it's you know, it's produced well. We're very proud of it, and on the second episode, going to have an extensive interview with Mickey Doyle, who's straight out of the Olympic, and a good guy.
And the third episode, all musical.
Well, it's not going to be just wrestling, because
You're going to sing. But you, Evan, are going to sing for the fans. The entire episode is going to be one long musical.
That's right. Innocent kittens will be flinging themselves off rooftops as I attempt to sing. And check out ProWrestlingStories.com. We have some great merchandise up there, autographed 8x10s from 60 or so legends. Check that out. And check out my books, Wrestling Rings, Blackboards, and movie sets, and also Grindhouse, Art House, and Wrestling Flicks, both available on Amazon. And yeah, man, this show, Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast, for over 6 years, we've tried to really honor people as we lose them. And I think it's tragic that people honestly think that agonizing over the latest WWE minutia is somehow more important.
We can do that next week. It's always there. There's nothing special.
Well, we're not knocking it, because I was thoroughly thrilled, like with AEW Collision last night, where you actually see sometimes better matches and less
but my point,
frenetic stuff in the Dynamite.
There. You can go to that any
week.
There. It's always
but
there.
Learn your history. Let me plug something, and it's not even one of my
Sure.
books. Evan's 2 books are excellent, but we just had, after a number of years away, Evan's great friend, just a great guy. I like him too. Dobie Maxwell's new book, Monkey in the Middle. Ev, where do people go? They go to Dobie Maxwell's website.
Yeah, Dobie Maxwell is a comedian.
He was on the show.
He's played Vegas.
He was on the show a couple of weeks ago.
He's done our show. He was on the Late Show on Nationwide TV. And he
loves wrestling.
He was a wrestling promoter. So check out his book, definitely.
Absolutely, guys. All right, well, we'll see you all next week. Good to see you
all. Long live
everyone.
Dory Funk Jr. Long live Dory Funk Jr. God bless Dory Funk Jr.
Instead of the Danhausen mask at Halloween, you should wear the Dory Funk Jr. mask at Halloween. That'll, yeah. Anyway.
But
right,
much respect and love to Dory's family, Marty, and all the kids.
All right. Good night, everyone.